Hello there, I am Old Ben, and this is the first of my new series of PowerPoint lectures reviewing cards and considering deck building in Marvel Champions, the card game. This lecture focuses on Captain Marvel and the justice aspect of core set cards, and will provide a critique of every card available to the build and come up with a final deck. A link to the Marvel CDB deck list for which can be found in the show notes. So without further ado, let's get on with Carol Danvers, Empowered. Let's start by having a look at the two sides of her identity card. First, she's got fairly standard stats for attack and thwart, but a low defense. This means you're probably never going to be using her to defend an attack. Her hero ability is excellent. A potential heal every turn is great, and the ability to draw back after spending the card is great too. You just need to make sure the deck is well stocked with energy resource pips. Adding to this, the universal draw on the alter ego side of the card, you can see that card draw is unlikely to be a problem with this deck. And now let's examine her card set, looking first at the cards that provide utility or flexibility. First up is the Alpha Flight Station. At one cost, this is a nice and cheap to get out and can be used in some form in either mode. In Alter Ego mode, it's a decent card draw engine, and in Hero mode, at the very least, it helps you dig for cards you need, such as those all-important energy pips. Cosmic Flight provides her with the aerial trait, although she doesn't make massive use of this, especially when compared to Iron Man, but it does also come up with a nice one-off damage soak and an all-important energy pip. Next is one of the two cards that plays off aerial. This gives you a standard defense of 2 for 2 cost, or in conjunction with Cosmic Flight for 4 cost, you can go up to defense 3. Is that worth it? I am not really sure. Finally, we've got Spider-Woman. At thwart 2 and 2 attack for a 3 cost ally, with an excellent enters play ability, she is very strong. Confusing the villain at the right time can be game saving. Yes, the low hit points mean she doesn't often stay around, but you're getting a lot of flexible value from the 3 resources. Now let's have a look at her attack focus cards. First up is Photonic Blast. At 3 costs of 5 damage, it's solid if not spectacular, but the ability to draw back a card if you spend an energy resource is the real key here, and moves the card from being the one main thing you're going to be doing on a turn to probably, potentially, one of 2 big effects that you can trigger. Next up is Energy Channel. This is a strange card as it takes time to build up, but that is a testament to its strength and versatility. When it goes off, it does some massive damage. I think there's only Iron Man with a perfect 5 card draw with Repulsor Blast that can beat this for damage. But that build-up process also gives you something to do with your cards when you're recovering in Alter Ego mode and you get that handful of hero actions that you just can't do anything with. If they've got enough energy pips on them, you can just throw them onto Energy Channel and power it up, so as soon as you go into hero mode, you can smack them for 10 damage. We've already seen that she's getting some benefits from having energy resources, but these two just really emphasize that aspect of her deck to the max. And that is where energy absorption comes in. A single card with 3 resource pips is super strong, and the fact that it either counts as 6 damage on Energy Channel or powers Photonic Blast all on its own makes it an essential card for the attack side of the deck. I cannot underestimate it, just how good this card is. You see this in your hand and you just know something great is going to happen. It's also worth noting that you're probably going to be making quite a lot of use out of her basic attack too. Particularly in this deck where you've got plenty of other options for removing threats, her attack stat is really good and is a really good way of getting rid of those low hit point minions, for reasons which will become clear later. Now, considering her thwarting cards, there's only really one that she's got, Crisis Introduction. It's 2 costs for 2 threat removal, which is okay if not amazing, but when you combine it with Cosmic Flight, well then it becomes situationally quite a powerful card. Even if the whole trick is quite a pricey one at a combined cost of 4, but the Cosmic Flight you only have to pay for once, so if you've got a few of these Crisis Interdictions, it can stack up and become quite a powerful combo. This card, really, much more than the helmet, is the reason why Cosmic Flight is worth playing. But still, it's an energy pip, so either one of these, if you haven't got the right situation, can be quite happily thrown away to help power something else in the deck. Now let's start building her deck, and whilst we do, let's have a look at both the Justice and the neutral cards that she can take. First up, let's have a look at her upgrades and support. Now, in a deck with plenty of card draw already, I am not sure that a big 4 cost of the Avengers Mansion is worth it. First Aid is a nice helpful card. It can keep her health fighting, but be aware that it is without that energy pip, but overall helpful. The Helicarrier I find much more cost effective than the Mansion. To some extent, it's just like having that extra card in hand every turn, and it only costs 3, so it doesn't likely cost you your entire turn just to get it out into play. If you can get it out early, it's really, really strong. Next up is Tenacity. Tenacity is effectively a 3-cost card, and it's worse than that because one of them has to be a strength resource, but it does have one of those all-important energy pips, which is nice. So another for the maybe pile. Finally, in this section, we've got Heroic Intuition. It's not a deck that you're going to be using your basic thwart for often, but it does have its strengths, and at 2 cost and with an energy pip, it's not a bad card to include. So again, I'm going to put it onto the maybe pile. Let's have a look at the allies now. Daredevil. I think is probably my favourite Justice card. The ability to thwart 2 and put out 1 damage 3 times, maybe more if you give him a first aid, is great. And it ties in directly with how the deck is trying to work. Jessica Jones can situationally be very useful when there's multiple schemes in play, but regardless, the 2 attack is decent and she provides that all-important energy pip. Mockingbird has a great enters play ability that can give you that all-important extra round in hero mode before you have to switch back and recover. And Nick Fury is just such a strong card, I don't know of a deck that I wouldn't take him in at the moment. He is the daddy. In short, all of these are worth a spot in the deck. Now, looking at the attack options, there is only really the Haymaker available. Given that this deck is trying to aggressively both put out damage and remove threat, and this card has an energy pip, it is a worthy inclusion. As you would expect, Justice provides us a few more options for thwarting than it does for attacking. Emergency gives a little bit of very cheap threat mitigation, and it has an energy pip. Definitely worth considering. For Justice is the engine room of this deck, outside of the Captain Marvel cards. There's usually enough of that science mental pips knocking around in the deck that you can usually manage to get off the big 4 threat removal. An absolute auto include. Great Responsibility is a card I've changed my mind on after I realised how it works, but specifically when talking about solo play. You need her to be in hero mode to use it, but the villain will rarely scheme when you are in hero mode. But in solo play, that just doesn't work. Maybe in multiplayer, there's a place for it, but as this is a solo deck build, it just doesn't work. Interrogation Room is a nice, cheap little support that gives you help when you need it in keeping the threat down, whilst you are focusing on attacking and getting rid of those minions. Given that it has an energy pip, it is a definite contender. Finally, we've got Surveillance Team. At 2 costs for effectively 3 threat removal at a rate of 1 per turn, it is objectively worse than for Justice, and without an energy pip, I just can't see a place for him in this deck. Maybe with other decks it might hold its own, but in this deck I just do not think it's worth it. Finally, resource cards. Power of Justice can be situationally good, and the neutrals are almost universally good, especially the energy one. Even with 2 copies of Energy Channel in this deck as well, I have not found that I want to cut any of these. So to the final deck. After the 15 signature cards, I think there's 19 cards that are auto-includes. All the allies, then the maximum copies of Interrogation Room, For Justice, Haymaker, and the resource cards. I'll also throw one Helicarrier as an auto-include, but you could add more if you wanted to make sure of it coming up early. After that, we've got First Aid, Great Responsibility if you're playing in a multiplayer game, which are both decent but don't have an energy icon. And then there's Heroic Intuition, Tenacity and Emergency that maybe have less useful, less critical abilities for the deck, but they do have that energy pit. You've got 6 slots to fill with those, so pick what you will think will work best, how you like to play. Personally, I've gone for 3 Emergencies, 2 First Aids and 1 Heroic Intuition, giving me a solid 27 energy pips in the deck. Don't forget to check out the deck list in the notes and the link to Marvel CDB, and any likes on here or on Marvel CDB would be appreciated. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications of the next show. I've got lectures on an Iron Man aggression deck up next, and it's one that's different from the Hulk-centered lists that have been bandied around recently, so watch out for that. But until next time, goodbye, old friend.